Okay, hello. Welcome to the 10 a.m. Create and Hang with me, Nick. And today we are going to be working on some more Harry Potter goodness. Essentially, if you are joining us for the first time, I am creating a Harry Potter RPG. Because I looked around and I couldn't seem to find one, and it's such a popular topic, so figured why not take a shot at it. Plus, it's good practice for making some games. You don't necessarily need to have the video game skills, and there goes a cat, the video game coding and digital skills to make a game. In fact, a lot of game creators suggest actually working in board games first, which is pretty cool. So I'm not going to cover where I am specifically in this. If you want to get caught up and see the previous stuff that I'm working on, go ahead and check that out. Essentially what I'm going to be doing from here, though, is I sort of started coming up with like fleshing out the main ideas and kind of like figuring out where everything needs to be, but we're still kind of missing a few details. So we're going to take a closer look at the combat system and see if I can figure out like what the sort of flow is going to look like. I think I have something sort of patched out with our protagonist Todd Nickelworth, the little character I created. So I'm going to do that for this 10 a.m. stream. Then I think in the 2 p.m. stream, I'm going to continue working on this, but we're going to focus on character creation and maybe some cool stuff that you can work on to like give your character like certain feats and backgrounds and whatnot. That might be a fun change of pace and like figure out how to actually create a character. So do a little bit of that. So for right now though, let's go ahead and jump in. And I just realized I did not change my project title. Sorry, Lori, I forgot. I will go ahead and change that in the next stream. I am not starting over because it's been a long day and we're going to power through. So forgive me, that project title is incorrect. I will change that for another time. So, so we kind of came up with this scenario where we had Todd Nickelworth versus a giant spider, but I definitely think I need to figure out how to like take in certain aspects of combat here. So cover I'm not totally worried about. Basically, I guess we can figure that out a little bit later. Speed, I don't know. I kind of mentioned that a little bit. It does like depend on how quick you are. Oh, lots of stuff. I think what we're gonna do is let's create another diagram here. This will be specifically for combat. Let's just do a blank diagram. When in doubt, make a flowchart. All right, so we're gonna call this combat. All right, so I don't know exactly how we're gonna do this, but let's say we have a player. I guess we can say player. I'm kind of figuring this out as we go here. Do we actually need a flowchart? I don't know. We'll see how this goes. All right, let's get in here. So let's say so we have non-player characters, which is NPCs, and then we have the actual players, which we'll refer to as either a witch or wizard, keeping in mind with the Harry Potter trait. So because Todd is our protagonist, we're going to say he is wizard player, right? So the wizard player, assuming that we are in combat, we never actually determined... My cat is circling me like a vulture, and I don't know what that means. Get out of here, you. Shoo. So actually, we should probably have combat begins, and traditionally, we have a initiative order. So roll initiative. We never actually specified how that works. But essentially, I think that will have to tie into our aspect of magic for balance and quickness, because the person who draws the wand first is probably going to get the first spell. So we're going to roll initiative. Did I just hide the arrow there? Yep. I guess we can... I get it. No, it's not what I wanted. Get out of here. Alright, so you roll initiative. Player or creature. I actually should specify how that works. Initiative. That's not how you spell initiative. Dang it. I just want the small text. Give me the small text. We'll just get rid of the big stuff here. Or maybe not. Alright. It's going to be that kind of a night. Or day. I may have just revealed that these might be pre-recorded, because my schedule does not allow me to stream at specific times every once in a while. Maybe. Any event. Let's go ahead and clear that out. And let's figure out how initiative works. So, like I said, we probably are going to rely on the balance and quickness here. So, I already said that we want to use... This is where it's going to get kind of weird, because how do I take the physical traits? Because players are going to want to choose to put points into certain systems. It's why we have the one work, the focus, and pronunciation, so that way you can choose what spells you specialize in. Same thing for the attributes over here. So I do want players to put points into this. The question is, how do we make that work? Because as these increase, what we've got in the original brainstorm over here is this will determine the difficulty of the resulting spell. Like how well you cast it, basically. Or how hard it is to defend or dodge. So... So maybe what I'll do here is have... What symbol do I want to use for this? Let's I don't know, go with circle. Oh, that's just a straight up circle. I wanted to change that into an oval. Will it allow me to do that? Nope, not at all. Just give me a line here. Just give me a line. So instead of writing this out in text, what I think I'm going to do is just put this out. Alright, so initiative is what? We've got... Let me actually split the screens up here. Sorry, we're off to a bit of a slow start, but it is very tricky to decide what sort of mechanics I want to use for this. Because I think the most tricky part of this is going to be the combat. Like, when you're out of combat and you're just asking your DM questions and whatnot, or I need to come up with a name for the Dungeon Master. I don't want to call it Dungeon Master. But when you're out of combat, and you're not in, you know, you don't have to take turns. You can just decide, oh, I want to cast a spell, or I want to make this check. You know what I mean? Which, these might come into play during combat, but you're probably not going to start mixing a potion when there's going to be, like, you know, a giant snake trying to gobble you. So they can just make those checks outside of combat. Combat's going to be a little bit trickier. So maybe we can say that this is initiative is equal to... Stop it. Equal to balance and quickness. But if we just do that, then there's going to be no change of order. There should be a little bit of randomness to it. So, the question is, like, as players put points in here, how do we determine what the system is. And you don't want to have a competing system. For example, if you look at, again, I talk about Dungeons & Dragons a lot, but all the systems are made so they work very similarly to each other. So it's not counterintuitive. It's very easy to remember the majority of the core rule set. There are specifics here and there, but it's very few. So I don't want this to work differently than this, for example. So the way that we had this work is we had, say, when Todd casts a spell, essentially then you will have it so the spell that you cast, once successful, will basically have a rating to see like how difficult it is, and that would determine the number that needed to be reached for the other player. You could cast the spell, but then essentially this would determine, how difficult it would be to dodge or deflect. So there aren't really stats with this per se, which is kind of interesting. I don't want to just copy Dungeons and Dragons. It's a fantastic system and I really like it, but I don't want to just copy it. Feel like it was recommended for me to check out the Scion system in Vampire the Masquerade. I should definitely look at that. But for this, we got to come up with something. But it's hard coming up with your own original idea here sometimes. So we definitely want the balance and quickness to play a part, but we want the roles to be involved here. So I think I said that everyone gets a physical pool, but it will not increase as quickly. So we can say that initiative is balance and quickness. And then either we can have this number added to it, perhaps, or we can have that determine what a success is. So if this is 1, then that by itself would determine that your success level is 1, which is kind of weird. So, do we have I want to try to avoid people looking up charts if I can help it, because the other thing we could do is, as you put points in this, there's like a corresponding chart that tells you like what your bonus is, or what your what your die pool is. Which I guess we should roll it back a little bit and just figure out what the core system is. Maybe that's a more important question to ask at this stage. Like, how does this core system work? So maybe I actually need a different flowchart. I know we're full of flowcharts today. But you know what? I think that is a much more important question, because it's gonna leak into the other systems. So we'll just call this core system. I hope I spelled that correctly. I did not. Core system. That was supposed to be a T. Okay. So let's figure out the core system. All right. So we have 3. Actually, I'm going to bring this over here. So we have the triangle system. Or the pools, as I like to dub it, right? So you have your spellcraft pool. Not pole, spellcraft pool. We are going to have a... what did I call it here? Your attributes pool. I guess we could call this your knowledge pool instead, because attributes could also could say, that could also be your, like, I don't know why words are so tough. Because when we say attributes, that could also suggest physical attributes. So knowledge seems to make much sense. Knowledge pool. Why am I cursed with... Yeah, oh, I forgot the thing. Okay, cool. So we have the spellcraft pool, the knowledge pool, and... Alright, so you got these three systems here. I'm just going to move these up, actually. Step it. And what do I want to call this last one? So I called this outward traits. So strength and toughness, balance and quickness, and then attractive and charismatic. So that also could be like body language, not necessarily physical beauty traits, but you could kind of like play that off however you want. So maybe I'll call these the physical pool. All right. So we have these 3 pools that we used. Alright. So then the question becomes, how do we derive a game out of this? How do we get numbers out of it? So from here, we can say that all of this stuff... Oh, that looks weird. So I think what I was doing was each pool, I need a slightly larger one here. So the idea was that each pool would contain their own specific like skills or areas of study, with the exception of this over here. So we could say that... Shush, cat. Apologies if you hear my cat yelling in the background. Shush. Go on. Shoot. Get out of here. Shoot. Go on. Shoot. Alright, so basically what I'm thinking here is that each pool has 3, I don't know what to call these right now. 3 what? Three points? No, that language is gonna get confusing. So, 3 major traits, we'll say, until I come up with something better. Each wizard starts out with 1 point in each trait. As levels are gained, points can be spent. I guess that's a good question on the leveling system as well. Do I just give the players a series of points to spend? Like, do I allow them to, like, level, like, all this up? The only thing I can see that being an issue is potentially having someone just pool everything into, like, wand work and focus and completely ignoring everything else. So they could be super good at defense against the dark arts, okay at transfiguration, and okay at charms, but being super good in that area and then being really bad everywhere else. I can see that being a nightmare. Or would that be really fun to play? It might be fun to play a broken character like that. You'd be absolutely rubbish the rest of this, though. You wouldn't be able to take a lot of hits either. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll allow that for right now. So, we'll see how that goes. We'll just have to test that. Points can be spent to increase the overall the overall trait. So like wand work is a trait of the spellcraft pool, for example. All right, so once we've got, so let's say we're increasing the numbers, all right? The stats are going up. What do we do with that? So what I'm thinking here how do I want this to work? Because right now, the system I have set up, it's primarily just die rolls. And there isn't any adding and subtracting. You either succeed or you fail. The way that these are currently set up is that they will determine the level of difficulty for the opponent, not necessarily for you. You either succeed or fail at it. So how would that come into play for such as a knowledge check, for example? Because we kind of like looked at this from, say, for like combat. It's pretty easy to apply because, oh, this is a difficulty check. This is how hard it is to dodge, make your roll. But then let's come back over here to say, like, let's say somebody is making a potion check. They're trying to brew a potion, whatever that might be. So maybe, because then how would that come into play? So we would roll, and then there isn't really a way to have the number like be checked, because when is an opponent going to be making a potion check? It doesn't make sense to have this number be associated with that roll, because there's nothing to compare it against. With combat, you're like, oh, clearly you have an enemy, but when you make a check, you're never going to be able to get that opportunity. So that is really, really weird. And then I don't want there to be a double set of rules, though. This is what I'm talking about in keeping things consistent. If I leave combat as it is, and then do something else for potions or for, like, making a jump across a ravine, then that's going to get really confusing. All the rules should be blended in a way that makes it easy to play. So how do we use these numbers then? Do we basically have, let's go back to the core system. So obviously there's going to be a die roll of some sort. We know that much, right? Whoop. You know, and there's a die roll. Where do we get this die roll from? This is going to be determined by your school level and the pool that you are deriving from. Pool you're using. I don't know why. My spelling is atrocious this afternoon, evening, morning. You don't know when this is airing. I mean, recorded. I mean, moving on. So we do have a die roll, and I know that I want this to be determined by your school level, so as you level up, and the pool that you are going to be using. So that's all well and good. We know that is going to be done some shape or form. The question then becomes, how do we tie in these attributes? Do we just add them? So you make a die roll, So let's see. So we have trait. Or I'm actually going to copy this here. So then we have the corresponding trait. Or else I'll rephrase this. Trait corresponding to action of player. So, for example, again, if we are, say, doing that potion check, then the person would rely on the traits of calculation and knowledge, because potions are essentially a mixture of those two things. You have to calculate the amounts, and you need to know what to mix. So they would rely on those traits corresponding to the player. So that is all well and good. So I'll say... So maybe we should give this a name here. So this is a trait, trait combination, or overall trait, and that is derived determined by the. So I don't know if we're going to keep this name or not. Determined by the corresponding traits for the skill attempted. There we go. So that seems to make sense so far. So let me see here. Determined by the corresponding traits for the skill attempted. So we'll continue with that potion example for right now. So we've got the die roll. We know that we are going to be deriving this from our knowledge pool. So then, maybe what we can say instead is, do we want to have this determine how many dice we roll? Does that make sense? That can get... no. That's probably a bad idea, because that's going to say... That's going to come up with a lot of dice. Even if you start on 1 and go up by 4. If you've got 4 here and 4 here, that's already 8 die you need to roll. No, that's a horrible idea. Let's not do that. But let's go ahead and assume we've got some numbers in here. The overall trait is that combination of numbers. So with our example here, we'll say that we're doing a specific potion example. Maybe I should use a different shape for this. Sure, I don't know how that's different. Potion example. And this would be, so the die roll for this would be the knowledge pool. And that would determine That would determine that I roll a certain number of dice. So we'll say, I don't know, knowledge pool, first year, 3d4. That's what I was coming up with so far. And this is the overall trait, which is so this is calculation, which we'll say for this example, well, I don't know what the numbers are yet. Calculation and knowledge. I'm going to put this in quotes because this number is likely to change, as well as the first year over here. Okay. So then this begs another question, though, because do we want the system to be determined by how much magic you can channel. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I am determining that your school level determines the number of dice that you get to roll. And then depending on it's like how much energy you are able to channel at this stage. And then your natural abilities will be able to make certain things succeed or fail. The question is how do we tie that all together? And again, keeping the system in a way that is simple, fair, and easy to use. So this is really the core stuff we're getting into, and this isn't always easy. So we got the dial. Part of this may just end up me staring at the screen going, ugh, and, you know, we may not get very far here. So what do we do here? We got a knowledge pool. So I guess the question that you could try to balance out here is, do you want to have the number of dice be a result of how many skill points you have? That might be interesting. So let's say, for example, let's actually go back to Todd for a minute, and let's maybe just throw some numbers in here and see how it works. So let's so let's say, I guess we got to make a character sheet for a second. So let's do a Google Doc. Todd Mickelworth. So we're just going to do his spellcraft stuff. So we've got, or we're going to do everything here. So spellcraft, well, I guess we should have wizarding level for school level. School level, we'll say first year, just to keep it simple. Spellcraft skills. Focus, I think we gave him a, I think for this one we're gonna say 3. Wand work, not wand word, wand work 2, and pronunciation is 1. And we'll do the 3, 2, 1 for the rest of it as well, just to make things a little bit easier to digest for right now. So then we have the whatchamacallits, knowledge. I guess I could call these skills. I don't necessarily have to call it. We call it the spellcraft skill or the spellcraft pool. Knowledge, skills. So then we have. Oh, I already have the knowledge called over here. Dang it. Do I want to call that something else? Which in wizard attributes? I guess I could just call it attributes and just consider those to be the witch and wizard attributes. Maybe that's why I gave it that name originally. Because it's witches and wizards don't really do things physically from a lot, unless well, unless you're super mad at Malfoy for some reason, then Hermione just punches him in the face. So we'll say witch and wizard attributes. So we said knowledge, calculation, and what's the last one? Observation. I'm going to say he's got 3. Probably a 1 here for Mickelworth. And I'm going to say 2 over there. He's an observational fella, but his overall knowledge of stuff is a little lower than it should be. Let's see here. And then physical outward traits. Or what did I call it? I know I haven't solidified any of the physical traits, I guess we could call it. I know I'm going back and forth here. So strength and toughness. We'll put this at, say, 2. Balance and quickness, 3, and then attractiveness, charismatic, we'll put at 1. Maybe he's very clumsy and not particularly, not particularly smooth, shall we say. All right, so we've got some attributes to work with here. Let's actually move this down. Okay. Why did I just kick here? Thought I kicked something. Okay. So for this particular example, the actual numbers here, which I'm going to keep using different shapes because why not? Oh, it's a triangle. I guess that's kind of fitting. Well, let's rotate that around. All right, so the actual number here, calculation and knowledge, would be 3. Can make that a little bit bigger, no? Come on. There we go. Why did it rotate? Why did you rotate? Is it just too big? Stop it! Ah! Why? You didn't rotate on the smaller size. Why? Oh, this is dumb. Are you gonna... Fine, get out of here. Alright, we'll use a cloud. Because why not? 3. Nope. Okay, cool. That's legible at least. Alright, so we got 3 here. And then we've got this sort of pool, which is determined by the level. So that's... So because he's a first year... What am I doing here? Where is... Oh, he's over here. So spellcraft skill... He's a first year, so that means he has 3d4 for spellcraft and knowledge. And we'll say 1d4 for physical. I don't know. That's kind of what I came up with. It does seem a little bit odd, though, now that I'm looking at this a little bit later. So the information here is, for the knowledge pool, is 3d4. Right? So it doesn't make sense to use this as a success rate, right? Because basically what this would mean is the higher I roll... Let me back up here. So if we are rolling with a knowledge pool of 3d4, originally I was thinking of using this number as a way to determine if something succeeds or not. So if a success is measured as a 3 or higher, then that may actually not work too badly. The problem is that as this is increasing, it's actually going to get harder for the person to complete the task, which doesn't make any sense. So does it then make sense to have that number increase and then have it be below that number, thereby making it easier? Because if this number is lower at the beginning... So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that, so you've got a knowledge pool, right? Do you then, when you roll that, as your skill increases, you need to get below that total number for it to be considered a success. So, interesting. Because that's kind of what I had it for with the spell list over here. We had, okay, get out of here. So we had the level of success for the spell, and then the number of successes required to basically cast it. I still feel like the attributes should somehow tie into this. So this is where we're kind of at a crossroads for figuring out how this system is going to work. So I just need something to kind of like quickly brainstorm here, which I guess I'll just use this document. I know I got documents up the wazoo here. They are all over the place right now. So we could say as one, roll dice pool, number of success, or success is, oh, not this song. I hate this song. I hate it. Go to Streets of Rage. Success is determined must roll below, what do we call it? Overall trait number. So that's one option. So what are some other ways we can combine this information together? We could say that could roll the dice pool, and we could add the overall success. So in other words, we could say that roll the dice pool, consider the overall successes needed, and then have that be factored in somehow. I don't know. Roll the dice pool and add overall trait to number of successes. So in other words, we roll the dice pool, we consult the chart, see how many successes we get, and then we can add the actual number to a success. I don't know. Another version of that is roll the dice pool. Overall trait number can be converted to a single success depending on level of spell, question mark. That seems very conditional. So if we go back to our example where Todd was fighting the monster, one suggestion I had, so for example, let's say that the level of success on the die, well, let me back up here. So the way that I was kind of counting this was the level, if you roll the dice pool, basically all you're doing is counting the number of successes. So a 2 or higher on a 2d4 is considered one success, and to cast a spell, you only need one success. But if using this suggestion that I had, depending on your overall trait, you could convert this into a success. So for example, because we need a 2 or higher, I could take 2 of those points, turn it into a success, and then I'll have 1 point left over to use. So that may not be too bad of a system. That's actually kind of interesting. I don't know if I want to depend on that, because then they're going to deplete points very quickly, but maybe that's another part of the mechanic where we can have players like actually use up their attributes, so that way they actually get weaker and weaker, but the cost there is by overextending yourself, which is definitely possible to do in the Harry Potter universe. So I do like that idea. I just don't think by itself it makes a very interesting system. So, okay, we're making some headway here. We're coming up with some ideas. Let's see how we can combine these numbers together a little bit more. So let me go ahead and there's my cat again. I'm going to put in a comment here, or maybe I won't. Will you let me do that? Google. Yeah, it's technically Google. No, I don't. No. Stop it! I don't know why that's highlighted. Can I indent? Okay, there we go. That's what I wanted. Can use as an additional mechanic. Depletion of resources. More likely to fail later. So I do think that is going to be very interesting to use. But again, by itself, not terribly interesting. So what else can we do here with these sets of numbers? Can we So I like using this idea, so that it definitely should come into the knowledge pool somehow. Maybe instead of counting it for a number of success, we can actually just add these numbers together. So add total dice roll, then add and overall trait for number. Compare to overall success. So this is a little bit more similar to Dungeons and Dragons, where we roll a dice and you add something on top of it. Again, that's not too bad, but because this is so dependent on spells, I can really easily see like the scale going crazy. That's one of the reasons I'm a little reluctant to do this. Maybe we can subtract numbers in some way. So we have roll the dice pool, determine number of successes, and then what do we do with that? Maybe instead of saying what the knowledge pool is, your calculation and knowledge determine how much dice you get to roll. That might be more interesting. Maybe I can say the level of your school determines the dice that you get to roll at all, but this number determines how many dice. That's interesting. So roll the dice pool. So maybe I need to rethink this a little bit. So die type determined by your school level. Right? So he's a first year, so that's a D4. And then your overall trait determined by the corresponding traits for the skills attempted. So calculation knowledge gives us a 3. So that would mean he would have to roll 3d4 to make this check. That I think is more interesting. And then what we can do is, if you want to spend an additional point here, you can add an additional die, but the next time you only roll 2d4. Okay. I like this. And we can still use that success or failure for the spells. I don't know why I got a southern drawl all of a sudden. For the spells. That's pretty cool. And this will actually make the levels a little bit easier to use. So your die type is determined by your school level. The overall trait is the corresponding traits for the skill attempted. And then... sorry, I have an itch right, like, not in my armpit, but it's, like, right where the shoulder starts to come around, and I don't know why. Ah! Alright, so we're coming up on an hour, but I think we're pulling at a really important thread here, so I don't want to pull this out. Determined by the corresponding traits for the skill attempted. Alright, so we have 3. I don't think we should leave it at just 3. I do think we need to cut this down a little bit, because let's say if you get 10 points in there, you're going to be rolling a lot of dice. And I don't want people to spend a ton of money on this because, obviously, you know, one, I'm making this rule set up for the purposes of sharing it. I'm not going to spend this on any money. But on that same note, I don't want to, hey, here's a free thing. Now go buy a bucket load of dice. That doesn't make any sense. So we do need to lower this number down a little bit. So let's maybe divide this by 2, rounding down. So for example, we do need to kind of balance that out a little bit. So overall trait is 3. And then we have number of dice. So maybe we'll say here we need to put in a little multiplication. Do I have an equal sign? I mean, that's sort of an equal sign. I'll take it. I need a little bar here, though, because this is not part of the equation. We'll say, do I have a dividing symbol? I do not. So we'll say / I said 2. Then divide by 2 and round down. Actually, I should say, all right, equals number of dice. So I guess we'll say modifier. That's fine because that's not determined by anything. That's just set by the rules. So equals number of dice. So then for here, this would be, so 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Rounding down is a 1. And maybe you can't go below 1. Is that right? Yeah. My math skills are not too good right now. Yeah, 1.5, so rounding down would be 1. So this would actually make it halfway decent to scale everything up. It does mean casting spells is going to get a little bit tougher, though. But on the flip side of that, if someone has, say, a skill of 5, divide that by 2, that gives you 2.5, so that gives you 2d4. So that's pretty cool. This is interesting, but again, I want to make sure that this is scaling up. So I think the other thing, I like this system that I've come up with, because then the chances of them succeeding are still there, and it doesn't add a ton of math. It adds some, but it still simplifies it. So, And again, this number that gets generated can still be... I'm actually just going to move this up here. I'm going to put a little dishy dash line. Because what's cool about this is not only does it lower the dice at the beginning, you still may need to buy a couple of sets, but it won't be nearly as much, off the bat at least. Second, this number that gets determined can go up. You can spend these points to, to make an automatic success. And this number can still be used in combat to determine how many successes the opponent needs. Or we can even use this number over here. So that this sort of simplifies things a little bit, but still kind of comes up with a method for the way the system works. So I apologize for how blubbery that was, and we kind of had to like look around and try and figure things out, but I think I like this. I like where this is going. Even though it differs a little bit from my original system, I'm going to keep working on this in my spare time and hopefully boost this up a little bit. But we're out of time for right now, so let me come back to, my little welcome screen here. So thank you for sitting through that with me. I know it's not always very exciting to try and watch someone kind of like grind out new ideas and how to use them. But this is like the core stuff. If I don't work on this and come up with the core gameplay, then everything else is going to fall apart. It doesn't matter how much like, artwork I throw at it. It doesn't matter how many like cool feats I write or like extra little things that will relate to the Wizarding world. It doesn't matter like how good I end up writing a story. I could write a story as good as J.K. Rowling. Not that I think I could actually do it, but even if I did manage to do it and write this really cool quest, if the game isn't fun to play and it doesn't make sense or it's too hard to use, nobody's going to play it. So this is why it's really important to do this now. So I apologize for having you forced to sit there and watch me sort of like stumble over my 2 feet as we do this, but it's crucial stuff. And I hope at the end of the day, motorcycle, you enjoyed it. Hopefully I kept it entertaining enough to watch. With that said, I am going to be coming back at 2 p.m. to just start working on some character stuff. So we're going to take a break from the core stuff and maybe just look at some things that would be fun when creating a character for a Harry Potter RPG. Again, it's going to be mostly brainstorming, just throwing some things at the wall, see what works. I may come back to this if we get to a stopping point with the character, but feel free to stop by and check that out. But yeah, for right now, I'm done, and I will see you guys at another point. So hope you enjoyed, and don't forget, if you want to learn more about like how to create gameplay mechanics or game design stuff, or if you're more into video games, we do have Unity classes. We do have programming. We have classes on Java, all kinds of stuff, and a bunch of other courses not necessarily related to game design. If you want to learn any of this cool stuff and just have a good time and learn some new skills, give us a buzz. We do all kinds of stuff. Our information is in the doobly-doo down below. Subscribe if you like seeing this stuff. Hit the bell notification so you're aware when we make these videos. And consider subscribing because it helps us out. That's my spiel, guys. I'm going to sign off. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.